Challenging the food police. Okay. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, Kate, too. Have you ever had clients come to you and say a family member, a coworker, a friend, a sister, a brother has made a comment about them honoring their newfound hunger cues with honoring the mental hunger and the physical hunger, maybe making a judgment about your client's food?
Yes, I've definitely had that. Just you know what? It's my client, and it's kind of not even a family, it's more like friends being like, "Oh, you're eating that." Like, I feel like a lot of people have that, and just being able to challenge that and having them being like, "I'm staying strong, I'm doing this," but there's definitely been instances where it's difficult to get through the meal when you already know people are judging you from that.
Absolutely. And I think the judgment can go both ways too. Like if you like, for example,
Absolutely.
like, okay, they have a piece of cake and people are making a comment, oh, you're having a piece of cake. Should you be doing that? And then it also goes like, if you decide maybe you want a salad out for lunch, but everybody else is maybe getting
Yeah.
burgers, pizza, which nothing wrong with that. But people might be making a judgment about you getting the salad. And maybe that's what you really wanted that day. Maybe it's hot outside and you don't want, a heavier meal right now. Like that's okay.
Sometimes a salad is just good. It doesn't have to, like, have any deeper meaning than just wanting a salad.
That's it. There needs to be middle ground, and you need to not have judgment about other people's food in the first place. So, I'm going to dive into intuitive eating today. And this is my favorite approach for nutrition and Kate's, I believe, from what I know. And we're going to kind of dive into like all the different principles of intuitive eating, kind of our coaching perspectives with intuitive eating, who we feel it would be a good fit for, when you should eat intuitively, and all the benefits that kind of come along with intuitive eating. So, intuitive eating is a whole body approach when it comes to nutrition, meaning it's not just about the physical body that you're fueling, it's also about the mental part of your body that you're also fueling. So it's a very like holistic approach when it comes to eating. And it's really a type of eating that allows you to embrace your well-being. So there's a lot of catering to mental health, which I think oftentimes isn't talked about enough when it comes to nutrition. And we feel very focused on the physical, like, get the micronutrients in, get the energy needs met. But oftentimes the mental perspective of food and the mental relationship we have with food is left to the wayside. And I think that's where a lot of coaches, dietitians that don't practice intuitive eating, any sort of personal trainer, health coach, is kind of falling short, and they're only addressing the physical part of nutrition and nourishment, and they're really lacking on the mental perspective. So to dive right into the principles, number one principle is ditching the diet mentality. So this is pretty straightforward. This means that you're not going to be engaging in dieting practices. So you're not going to be restricting your calories to induce weight loss. Intuitive eating is not a weight loss diet. I think that's where people get confused. They think, oh, I can eat intuitively and I'm still going to be able to lose weight. Maybe for some people, depending on what their eating behaviors looked like previous to their intuitive eating. If they were constantly overriding hunger cues, eating past fullness, then that's where maybe, they start honoring those hunger cues, respecting that in the digestion. Maybe as a result of that, they're losing weight because they're not over consuming foods. But that's not necessarily the purpose of intuitive eating. Um, Intuitive eating is going to really encourage a health-centric approach to nourishing your body and really allowing your internal to guide you rather than focusing on external things to guide you. Meaning, if you've ever followed tracking macros approach or a meal plan, you're given this set of macros, you're given this meal plan, and you're being told to follow it no matter what your hunger is telling you, or what your energy levels are telling you, or what your cravings are telling you. So you're really focusing on the internal guiding you, your internal hunger cues. And you're really going to work towards like breaking free from that cycle of restriction and learning how to rebuild trust with your body and accepting your body where it's at in that moment. So I think another way to kind of put it is kind of choosing that food freedom. And I think you can find food freedom in many ways, not just intuitive eating. I think with even like flexible dieting aspects of things, you can kind of ditch some of that restrictive mentality. But when you are tracking macros, whichever way you put it, there is a sense of restriction that's going to be there because you're being told to hit certain numbers. So intuitive eating is different in that way. You're not following numbers. You're not following, this outside guideline. We'll talk about some gentle nutrition guidelines that we provide to our clients that kind of just give them some direction, because sometimes you get this plan of intuitive eating and it's like, well, where do I even start? I don't even know what to do.
Right. It's just a bunch of foods there, and you're like, oh, okay. How do I do this?
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. So like gentle nutrition guidelines are cool. That's great. But this isn't something that's going to be hit these macros, hit this meal plan, and then it's, that's your only option.
Mhm.
There's a lot of flexibility. So another principle of intuitive eating is honoring your hunger, which is going to come from mental hunger and physical hunger. And I think this is a good opportunity for us to kind of talk about the differences between the two. So, Kate, do you want to explain what physical hunger is?
Yeah. So physical hunger is like when you feel that like rumble in your tummy. You're getting like a physical reaction from your stomach telling you, signaling that it is hungry. It needs something. Mental hunger is more of like a craving. It's sudden. It's oh, I see pizza, I want pizza right now. It's okay to honor both of those. But
Yeah.
there is a difference. It's important to know that there is a difference between your body actually needing something and then your mind saying, "Oh, I want that right now."
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, really well said. And I think a big thing I notice for clients is they feel honestly really hesitant to honor both types of hunger, but
Mhm.
especially that mental hunger.
Yeah.
And I find that when people are fearing honoring that mental hunger, it's usually in regards to a certain like fun food. And we're going to dive into why fun foods fit, and it's nothing to feel stressed about. But even in many cases, honoring physical hunger with, whole foods, fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, heart healthy fats, for some people can be really nerve wracking to actually feel that sensation of actual satiety and fullness,
Mhm.
especially if somebody's been dieting for a long time. I know for the population that I worked with a lot in the past, in terms of bodybuilders and competitors, they would almost feel guilty if they felt full or satisfied. And they kind of always chased that feeling of hunger.
Yeah.
And if they felt like they were doing something wrong, if they weren't feeling very hungry. So intuitive eating is going to challenge both of those areas of hunger, that physical and that mental, letting your body kind of guide the way and finding ways to incorporate those fun foods in a mindful manner, respecting your hunger cues, respecting that physical hunger.
I would be interested, I'm sure this has happened to you, but like having clients text you and be like, "Is this okay to eat?" And even I don't want to put my sister on blast, but like even my sister's done it. Is send
Mm,
you pictures and say, "Is it okay to eat this?" And you just kind of have to give them that reassurance because they have a past of, "Oh, this doesn't look good," or like this doesn't seem like it would be a good thing for me to put into my body, so I'm not going to do it, which is good in some cases. But when it's something that like is a cupcake that you've had, like you've been waiting for this entire month, and like they have to send you a picture of it to like give that reassurance that yes, of course you can have it, of course enjoy the cupcake, like. And I think that's a big thing for a lot of clients is needing that person to be able to tell you you can have it and having that security of it.
absolutely. You're so right. I get those texts, especially at like the beginning of somebody's intuitive eating journey, a
Mhm.
lot. Like, is it okay for me to have this Taco Bell? Is it okay for me to have this dessert every night of the week if I want to? And like they feel like they're doing something wrong. So hearing from our perspective as coaches, as nutrition professionals, we can kind of provide that reassurance and be like, yeah, it's totally fine. And like, here's why it's fine. And like, your body's going to, digest and absorb the carbohydrates from the Taco Bell meal the same way that it would from the maybe, at home taco bowl that you made at home. And
Exactly.
it's maybe there's a difference in the micronutrient profile, sure. Maybe the quality of the meats looks different at Taco Bell versus say you're going to Whole Foods and you're getting these organic meats or whatever. Sure, maybe there's a slight differentiation in the micronutrient profile. But as long as when you are having the Taco Bell, you're able to respect your body's internal hunger, that physical sensation of hunger, you're starting to feel full, you might even feel a little bloated, you're noticing your appetite is decreasing, and you're able to stop eating at that point, allow for leftovers, and move on with your day, not allow that Taco Bell to change the way that you navigate food for the remainder of the day, and still allow for you to focus in on some really good nutrition principles, like trying to get some fruits and vegetables in, stay well hydrated, make sure that we're prioritizing protein at each of our meals. You're still taking into consideration those like really good nutrition practices. You have that fun food like the Taco Bell, there's really no negative impact on your health, on your body composition, and hopefully not your well-being either in terms of a mental health perspective, because there's nothing to feel guilty about when having that Taco Bell. So I find that I have that conversation a lot with
Yeah.
my clients. I came up with this cute little exercise, and I can send it to you too, Kate, for like resources for clients. But like we did this over a Zoom call once a couple of months ago with the team. And we kind of went through comparisons of like regular pasta versus chickpea pasta, sweet green bowl versus I think it was like a Domino's pizza, like, and just kind of showcasing like there are, a high amount of fats in that sweet green bowl, and there's actually less fats in the pizza, but we demonize the pizza. Are fats bad? No, but it's like giving a nice comparison of like, is one really better than the other? And it's like in some areas, sure, maybe micronutrient wise, but in terms of actual caloric intake or the effect it's going to have on your body, it's like very minimal, very insignificant. So I find that little exercise to be helpful for some people, and
Yep.
kind of breaking it down that way. Um, when you have a client text you, Kate, and they're feeling nervous or anxious about having a certain food, how do you kind of walk them through that process?
I sometimes I'll ask what the like preface, like if it's okay to ask this, what is the background of it, why are you so anxious about it, all these things, just so I can get a background of it. And honestly, going through coaching, it's going to take time. It's not going to be a fear food that you're just going to be able to eat
Yeah.
like right off the bat. I say it's okay, you're already eating it. Like it's a process and it's going to take a while, so like reintroducing it very slowly,
Hmm.
saying like, okay, add it, just say cottage cheese. I never ate cottage cheese when I was little, and I just was very grossed out by the texture and all these things. Big texture gal.
Yeah.
But say someone is like, that's kind of a fear food for them.
Hmm.
Try adding it in eggs. Try doing a little, like little by little, trying to reintroduce it. And I found that that's actually worked very well.
Yeah.
So it gives them that time to not feel like they need to do it right away and give them even more anxiety about it.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to approach it. I would call that like an exposure type therapy,
Yes.
basically. And honestly, one of the more enjoyable parts of coaching I find is doing some exposures with food. And of course, in the moment for some of the clients, like it's a lot of anxiety. It's hard.
Mhm.
I've even had exposures with people like on Zoom, and we'll like do the exposure together on Zoom, and it can be really helpful to like have that support depending on the level of anxiety someone might get with that food.
Mhm.
But having little introductions to it to kind of normalize the experience with food, like especially if somebody's had a history of binge eating disorder or binge eating tendencies, I'll use the example of ice cream because I've seen this come up so many times and I use it very commonly. Is people have difficulty regulating appetite with ice cream. I used to be one of those people. I used to binge on ice cream. That was like something I really struggled with, especially when I came out of some of my show preps. Like I just would get a free meal and like I would just have the whole pint of ice cream, and then my stomach would be in knots and it would hurt because I was like
Yeah,
eating
right.
past my hunger cues. Um, but for clients, they'll struggle with very similar things. So we'll do like a bowl of ice cream every night. And at first it's like, oh, well, I only really allowed myself this, once a month or once every couple of months or only in my off season for competitors. And
Mhm.
then once they start having more practice with that food, I find that the behaviors with the food begin to improve. We might have a moment of like, I ate the whole pint. Oops, it happens.
Oopsie,
Okay.
yeah.
A part of that learning process. But over time, the ice cream becomes almost like less special in a way. Like ice cream's always good, but like it's not this forbidden food anymore that they never have access to. They are now having regular access to it. They've had practice with regulating their hunger with that food, and they know that that food is always there for them tomorrow if they want it. So there doesn't really need to be this all or nothing mentality when it comes to that food anymore. So I love the exposures as well. I find them to be really helpful. Cool. I love it. Um, Another little tip when it comes to like honoring mental versus physical hunger, if you're not sure if you're physically satisfied or you want more food, if you're kind of approaching that point of fullness, you can always slow down your pacing at that meal. And if you have the ability, maybe wait 15, 20 minutes or so before going back for seconds or adding more to your plate or having like a snack after dinner or lunch, whatever it may be, because it takes about 20 minutes for the gut and the brain to communicate fullness. So that's why pacing is also really important when it comes to intuitive eating. Um, I have a little tip like every 3 to 5 bites, put your fork down, put the food down, and that can be helpful in slowing it down. I eat so fast. I feel like sometimes
I
I
do
can't
too.
help it. Like, does that
Yeah.
resonate with you? Yeah.
Yes. It's not even that I'm like I'm I'm starving, so I feel like I need to intake so much food. It's more just like I chew fast, I swallow fast, and I just want like more. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it
Yeah.
just feels like a very normal thing to do, I guess.
Yeah.
Like I have some people that will like take an hour to eat. And I'm like, oh goodness.
I know. I'm always amazed at those people because I'm like, dude,
They have
I
pacing built in. I'm like, that's great.
yeah. No, like this, like every 3 to 5 bite trick, like I have to apply to
Yeah.
myself. And like, I'll be honest, I'm not always great about it. Especially like in a work day, like I am just inhaling food to move on to the next task a lot of the time, which isn't great. I know a lot of people deal with that too, like in fast-paced environments, but every 3 to 5 bites, put the food down, take a sip of water, take a deep breath, can slow you down.
Yeah.
And it also helps digestion.
Mhm.
Um, so another principle of intuitive eating is making peace with food, which kind of goes along with a lot of our discussion that we just had about like all foods fit, honoring mental hunger. And this just means we're going to ditch that mentality of the good food versus bad food mentality. And I do feel as though I address this concept with my clients with that very similar exercise of like comparing, say, the sweet green bowl to the pizza and like how like the calories can actually be very similar or the pizza is less calories than the sweet green bowl and giving that like little breakdown.
Mhm.
Uh, so I find that to be really helpful. Anything else you want to add there, Kate?
I feel like you hit it on the money. Giving just examples of things, like even some things I put on my Instagram, like a couple posts ago, it was just kind of comparing like these. It's not that different. There's
Mhm.
differences, but it's not that different. So it's
Right.
it's all gonna metabolize in the body the same. It's all going in your body. It's all gonna come out the same way. So it's gonna be okay.
Yes, as long as you don't have an intolerance, because if you have an
Yes.
intolerance, then it might come out different. No,
Yeah,
that's
sometimes it comes out the wrong way. But
I need to start saying that, and it's all going to come out the same too. I love it. That's good. That's good stuff. I like it. Um, Challenging the food police. Okay, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, Kate, too. Have you ever had clients come to you and say a family member, a coworker, a friend, a sister, a brother has made a comment about them honoring their newfound hunger cues with honoring the mental hunger and the physical hunger, maybe making a judgment about your client's food? You ever had that?
yes, I've definitely had that. Just you know what? It's my client, and it's kind of not even a family, it's more like friends being like, "Oh, you're eating that." Like, I feel like a lot of people have that,
Yeah.
and just being able to challenge that and have her work through that, and she's a stable woman. She is a very stable woman, so I'm so proud of her for being able to, like, tell me about it, tell her how it's difficult for her to, like, have those people tell her all these things, and just have my reassurance. Again, it's all security with coaching as well as actual coaching. But having them being like, I'm staying strong, I'm doing this. But there's definitely been instances where it's hurt her feelings, or it's difficult to get through the meal when you already know people are judging you from that.
Absolutely. And I think the judgment can go both ways too. Like if you like, for example,
Absolutely.
like, okay, they have a piece of cake and people are making a comment, oh, you're having a piece of cake. Should you be doing that? And then it also goes like, if you decide maybe you want a salad out for lunch, but everybody else is maybe getting
Yeah.
burgers, pizza, which nothing wrong with that. But people might be making a judgment about you getting the salad. And maybe that's what you really wanted that day. Maybe it's hot outside and you don't want, a heavier meal right now. Like that's okay.
Sometimes a salad is just good. It doesn't have to like have any deeper meaning than just wanting a salad.
That's it. And what I found to be really interesting, so like when I was in my internship, this is the tea. Here's some tea.
Oh, I love the tea.
I was in my eating disorder rotation. It was at this big, like chain treatment center, if you will. And I had never received so much judgment or heard so much judgment about what other people in the office were eating than at this eating disorder facility place, which you would think would be the opposite. Being eating disorder dietitians, you would have your judgment very low. But for example, one person, it was a therapist, would bring in a smoothie for breakfast every day. And they would make comments and be like, are you disordered? Why aren't you eating a real breakfast?
Would say this to your face.
They would say this to the person's face. So luckily it wasn't me. They said the stuff
Uh-huh.
about my food behind my back to my teachers. We'll get into that. But it was a whole thing, like with this one therapist that would bring in a smoothie for breakfast every day because it was just easy for him. He liked it. And they used to make fun of him and like say stuff all the time and be like, oh, that's a little sketch. Um, and I just found it was like if you ate healthy there in front of people, or healthy, whatever that means to you, they would have a lot of judgment about that. Like it was so weird. It was so weird. And then at my clinical, it was like the opposite, where like, oh, if the dietitians had a cookie or a sub or a pizza, they would then be like, I shouldn't be having this or I shouldn't be doing this, which both areas are wrong. Like that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to get across. It's like there needs to be middle ground and you need to not have judgment about other people's food in the first place, unless you're like a parent and you're worried about your kid. That's so different. But like in terms of judging your sister, your friend, your coworker, keep the judgments to yourself. It
Right.
doesn't. It doesn't. So
Let them eat what they want. If they picked it,
yeah,
that's clearly what they want. So let them have it. It's like unless it's a very worrisome problem and it's affecting you, then you say something.
yeah,
But 9 times out of 10 it's not going to affect you. So why do you care? Why do you care?
that's it. And it's just like if you're gonna make someone feel uncomfortable about the food that they're choosing, no matter what they're choosing, I just think it's wrong. It's like it's being judgmental. It's just like not nice. It's not a nice thing to do. So with intuitive eating, you want to challenge the food police. So like if someone's making a comment about your food, typically how I'll recommend like clients deal with something like this. Number one, if they feel comfortable speaking up for themselves, I always try to empower them to do that. Like,
Mhm.
communicate, have communication with the people that are making the judgment. Like, oh, I choose this food because this is what I like and this is what feels good for me. I'd appreciate you to like not say anything. Go ahead.
I just wanted to stem back because I actually just remembered something. So,
Yeah.
when I was out this weekend, my friend took a picture of me eating a piece of pizza.
Mm,
Eating a piece of pizza. I meet up my with my friends at this other place later in the night, and he comes up to me and says, "Oh, you're a coach and you're eating pizza? Oh, you're a coach and I eat pizza? You want to know what I said?" I turned around and said, "Absolutely, I am, because guess what? I wanted pizza." So, and then he didn't really have anything else to say about that. So I was like, just
well,
stand up for yourself. Just say you
great
want
example. That was great, Kate. I appreciate you sharing that. And I have had a few scenarios, especially like in my bodybuilding days, where
it.
like I remember vividly, I was at a grad party. It was actually a very close friend of mine's grad party. And I had a slice of cake at the grad party. And I had just finished up my competition season and I was in my reverse diet, all these things, whatever. And there were like 5 people that were like, oh my God, Kelly Igo's eating cake. Everybody documented. They started taking pictures and videos. And like, I know they were joking, but it made me really uncomfortable. And I was like, here I am post show. Like your relationship with food post show is kind of weird. And I've always been pretty lucky. I didn't deal with anything too severe post show, but it still feels weird. And you're still like learning to eat normally after contest prep in many ways, like not feeling guilty for having cake, not feeling weird about, being more normal. And like when people start making comments about it, it's like, oh man, like I didn't want attention about the cake that I'm eating. Like it just
Yeah, right.
comfortable. So yeah, no. So speak up for yourself. And in that moment, I didn't speak up for myself because at the time I was kind of still very much so let everybody kind of like just say what they want, walk all over me. And like that was that. But like if I could go back, I would be more like Kate and I would say, yeah, of course I'm eating the pizza. And like just say it
I
like it's
wanted it. Yeah, like it's okay to eat pizza.
ridiculous. Another principle of intuitive eating is discovering satisfaction. So like in terms of satisfaction, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, Kate, like from a true, just like opinion-based feel. What do you define as like satisfaction when it comes to food? How would you explain that to a client?
This one is hard because I also struggle with it. So
Yeah.
it's difficult to know when you're satisfied because once you feel like, "Oh my god, I shouldn't have eaten that," like,
Yeah,
that is just way too full, and
sure.
you've already hit that cue, like, way over. So, once you're taking a few bites at a time, I'd say look at your plate. Once you're, like, halfway done, you have to, like, reassess almost. You'd be like, "Okay, am I still hungry?" If you are, you take another bite.
Yep. Check in
If
with
you're
yourself.
like, "Okay, I think I can stop here and, like, I would be fine with leftovers," then that's that. You don't have to the whole thing with finishing a plate, I feel like that is very installed in some people's mind because it's in some cultures, it's very, like, you have to finish your plate. I remember I had a friend that, like, you had to finish your plate, you were not getting up till you finished that plate.
Yes. A lot of families, like a family
Yeah.
dinner dynamic. It's like the parents are like, you better lick your plate clean. There are kids in Africa that don't have food, like that type of thing. And
It's
it's
like the threats that would
it is, it's the threat. It's a threat about food. Yes.
so that I think is installed in a lot of people's minds, I'm sure. And some people are like, "Oh, I feel like I can't eat anymore, but I didn't finish." I'm like, "It's okay to have leftovers. Do you know how many leftovers are in my fridge right now? That like if you don't want it later, it's okay. You can throw it away." I mean, it's it's the fear that is installed in people that has like taken over a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think that what I first said, like being able to look at your plate and just reassess the situation and
Mhm.
just being like, okay, I can either take this home or I can eat a little bit more of it. It doesn't have to you don't have to finish the whole plate. Don't
Yeah.
feel like you have to finish the whole plate. You don't got your mom hovering over you saying finish your own plate.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's a very common conversation that I have because like when we're kind of unpacking like relationship with food and like where do some of these behaviors kind of stem from, a lot of this stems from childhood, believe it or not. Like in little things that you didn't even realize that you're doing in your adulthood with food likely did stem from when you were a kiddo. So I love that explanation about the physical satisfaction. And I'm going to bring in a different perspective about like mental satisfaction and something that I think some people struggle with. And this kind of goes back to like honoring the mental versus physical hunger. Say you finish your dinner and you're feeling physically full, but you have a little bit of a craving for something, a little sweet treat, kind of like we were
Yeah.
talking about right
Yeah.
at the beginning of this pod. I am a notorious sweet treat girly, okay? Like I have a sweet tooth. I always have. I probably always will. And my relationship with my own sweet tooth has been very up and down throughout my life. In the past, maybe like 7 years, I'm in a very healthy place with it.
Yeah.
But for
Yeah.
a long time, I wasn't. It was either nothing or it was all of the thing. And I think for some people, maybe physically they are satisfied, they're full, but mentally they need a little something else. And so in that case, you can honor that mental hunger to become mentally satisfied with hunger. And so maybe you have a cookie after dinner. Maybe you're not super hungry for the cookie physically, but maybe by having that cookie, honoring that mental hunger, kind of fulfilling that mental satisfaction, if you will, will allow for you to practice better mindfulness with that food, have a healthier relationship with that food. Did you need the cookie from an energy requirement standpoint? Maybe not, because maybe physically you weren't super hungry. But if by having that one cookie after dinner allows for you to not have the whole box of cookies, once a week, because you restrict yourself from it throughout the entire week, except for the weekend, it is a much better approach. And so that's where, like, I'll have conversations with clients. They're like, well, how do I know, like, when I am approaching that physical hunger, like, to your point, that is very hard. And then also, like, when do I know it's okay to, like, have the cookie? And, like, maybe, I don't say surpass hunger cues a little bit, but, like, maybe you're not super physically hungry, but, like, mentally we are. So when do you know when to honor that?
Exactly.
And I think that's a hard kind of like debacle for people when they first start intuitive eating.
Exactly. I was
But
gonna go back to another point where you had that sweet treat where it's like when you have a plate, say you have steak tips, you have fries, and you have like veggies.
yeah.
You're eating the steak tips, you maybe have like one and a half left. And when I was younger, I'd always physically say, like out loud, I'm not hungry for this anymore. I want the fries now.
Yes.
It's it's a different, it's almost like a craving based thing,
Yeah.
but also you're not completely full yet. You want to now switch over to the other food that is going to satisfy you mentally and satisfy you physically.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
wanted to hear your thoughts on that if you've ever experienced that or
Yes.
seen that.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
Yeah.
And so like I love the steak tip example. I'm crazy about steak tips. I love steak tips. I'm gonna eat every steak tip. But
I'm
like
gonna be honest.
I totally get it, because I'll have like this, like, well, I'm full from dinner, but I have plenty of room for dessert type hunger, back to my
Yes. Yes.
too. And sometimes, like, I'll, like, even just on my plate, like, I'll maybe be full of my protein, maybe I had enough chicken. I'll use that because I can always be done with chicken. I get like a ick with chicken sometimes. So like
Yeah.
I can be done with the chicken, but I want all of my potatoes and I want all of my vegetables.
Yeah.
And like that's okay to honor that. Would it even be a craving? It's just hunger. It's okay to honor that.
Yeah.
And when people come from a history of tracking macros or following a meal plan, a lot of this flexibility that I think should naturally come to people is completely overridden. And like they kind of like forget that it's okay to allow for that flexibility. So to like our point of this discussion is like, it's okay to like allow yourself to be satisfied with the foods that you genuinely want in that moment, and to leave leftovers of the food that maybe you don't want in that moment. It's okay to allow for your physical hunger to guide you, but also respect and honor that mental hunger too, even if you're not super physically hungry at the time.
Absolutely.
So I love that. Uh, oh, this is a good one. So another principle of intuitive eating is unraveling emotional eating. So I would love to hear your experience with this, Kate, from a coaching perspective. Right now, like looking at your roster, do you have any people that are eating emotionally?
Yes, I do have some that are like it'll be at nighttime. It's always at nighttime.
It's at night. Okay.
Always at nighttime. Where it's it's a almost a binge eating sort of thing,
Okay.
where it's I'm not eating enough foods, I'm not getting in enough foods. I know that, but then at the end of the day when I get home, I am just absolutely going shit house in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I think a lot of people struggle with, and I don't think they actually put a name to it. They didn't know what it was,
Yeah.
and it was almost like, oh, this is like my I just eat at night. This is when I eat.
Mm-hmm.
So I think being able to space out foods throughout the day, making sure you're eating at least like a little snack during the day, like something that's like every 3 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you get home, you don't feel the need to just have like a 4 course meal. Not meaning you can't have a 4 course meal, but like of
Right.
like junk food because that's what they're gravitating towards. It's junk food. It's like Cheez-Its and um, Cheetos and chips and dip and all these things. It's not like you can have that, but once you get to a certain point, it's considered
Yeah.
binging.
I hear that. And I think you bring up a good point about the nighttime eating, because a lot of
Mhm.
people use food to decompress at the end of the day and
Yeah.
like cope with the daily stressors that are life. And when we're gravitating towards like that quote unquote junk food, like the chips and the things, a lot of the time you're going to get more of a serotonin boost from those foods. So people
Yes.
lean into those foods versus like, oh, I'm going to emotionally eat on a whole thing of fruit, which if you do, great. You might
Right.
get stomach ache from all the like the fiber, but most commonly we see it with like those snacky type foods.
Mhm.
And so I find that when it comes to emotional eating and intuitive eating is arguably the best way to treat emotional eating and help reduce a lot of those intensive emotional eating experiences. So, like to Kate's point, regular meal timing throughout the day, making sure that you're eating regularly. So that way your body is receiving fuel every 3-ish hours or so. So that way your blood sugar is regulated. When your blood sugar is regulated, your internal hunger cues are going to be better regulated. So your ghrelin isn't getting super ultra produced because you went 6 hours without eating between lunch and your dinner. Now you get home, you're absolutely starving and you're tearing the cabinets apart. We've all been there. It happens. But if you can try to keep a regular eating schedule, make sure you're having snacks throughout the day. I think a lot of people fear snacking when it's like one of the best things you can do because it's going to allow for you to better regulate your hunger. You're going to be able to respect your hunger better at your meals, better at your snacks if you're eating snacks throughout the day. So don't fear snacks. We're going to talk about rule of threes and how many snacks we kind of recommend, but intuitive eating is amazing for unpacking the emotional eating. And I think another piece to this is like developing alternative coping mechanisms. So again, we're using food to fill a void and we all do it. I think there's a normal amount of emotional eating that we all do as humans. We go to a birthday party. Maybe we're full from, the pizza or the dinner, but it's a birthday party. We're probably going to have a slice of cake, right? And
Right.
so that's a form of emotional eating. It's a happy form of emotional eating. And I like to bring in the positive ones because I think we're very familiar with the not so positive ones. Or you could use the analogy that we see in the movies, like someone gets broken up with and they eat the pint of ice cream with a gallon of ice cream. And there's a normal amount of emotional eating that takes place as a human. But if you are defaulting to that as your primary coping mechanism and it's really not making you feel better, then that's when it's time to explore other options. So another thing I really love to do when it comes to addressing emotional eating is brainstorming these alternative coping mechanisms, but also kind of breaking down what the environment looks like and what kind of distractions we can maybe lean into. So for a lot of people with emotional eating, it does take place at night. That's a very common thing. Um, Either in the kitchen, in the living room, or maybe in the bedroom if someone's taking food back to their bedroom. So when I'm unpacking this with somebody, I like to find out, well, what's the environment look like? And sometimes we'll even have a game plan to remove themselves from the environment. So say it's like after dinner time is when the emotional eating comes up. Okay, let's clean the dishes and get out of the kitchen. Let's go take a shower and get ready for bed and hang out in my bedroom or hang out in the living room, away from the environment that is allowing me to lean into the emotional eating. I find that to be helpful. As far as like distractions go, I am a big fan of adult coloring. Now, that might come across like a little.
I love coloring. I'm
It,
so glad you're on that train because I love coloring.
it's so therapeutic.
It
It's so
is.
therapeutic. And like they used art coloring, like, and this just goes for so many different forms of art. Like if you're like really creative and you could like paint and, do a whole thing, I mean, go right
Oh
ahead.
yeah.
I am unfortunately not in that route, but like I love an adult coloring book. And so I find that that can be really soothing for people, and can be a very helpful tool. And just like other forms of like coping, like maybe go hang out with your pet. If you have kiddos at home, maybe go play with your kids or like distract yourself with the kids. If you have somebody that you live with at home, if it's a romantic partner or just a roommate, maybe you could like have, a moment with them, lean into them as a coping mechanism, have a conversation with them, find out what their day was like. Or if you feel comfortable, even communicating that to them, like, hey, I'm feeling like I might have an emotional eating experience. Would you be willing to sit down and talk with me for 15 minutes? And most people are like, yeah, absolutely. I find this to be a helpful dynamic when it is more of like a romantic partner, like husband or a wife. A lot of the time, bringing that support in from like all angles can be really helpful. But I love emotion. I love intuitive eating to address emotional eating. I don't love emotional eating. It's a hard thing to love, But I love intuitive eating as a form of nutrition that helps you to overcome and work through emotional eating behaviors. Um,
Absolutely.
I'll also add this one last thing. The goal is not to completely eradicate emotional eating. It's to change the severity of the experience. So like to Kate's point, for a lot of her clients that are emotionally eating, they're having binge eating like tendencies. Maybe our goal is to, instead of having, the whole bag of chips, we only have 2 bowls of chips instead. And that's a win.
Pulling
So
out those measuring things almost like just to keep you not having the entire bag
yeah,
is
yeah,
much different. Like having the entire bag on the couch watching TV, much different from having a small bowl of chips at the TV. And if you feel like you want more, you can go get another bowl.
right, right. And here's the caveat with the portion controlling type tools is like, you got to get up from the couch. You got to go put more
Right.
in. And it's okay if you go get more, but it makes you have to think about it. It's bringing a layer of mindfulness to the situation that probably wouldn't be present if we had the whole bag of chips cozied up on the couch. Like it's really easy to just like eat the whole bag in that situation. So yeah, that's a really, really good point. I love that. Um, Another principle of intuitive eating is respecting your body. So I think this can mean different things to different people. Um, I think for my definition of this, and I would love to hear yours, Kate, as well. When it comes to respecting your body, being able to practice some level of body neutrality, I think, is important with intuitive eating because, like I said from the start of this, it's not a weight loss diet. It's not a nutrition approach that is being implemented to necessarily change your appearance or change the way that your body's presenting. Um, it's more so a way to nourish your body, meet your body where it's at and what it needs in that moment in real time. So, Kate, I'd love to hear your perspective in terms of this principle, respecting your body and kind of what that means to you.
I absolutely agree. I feel like it's being able to know that this diet is not almost like agreeing to this diet. Say I tell my client this is how I start my clients off actually is making sure that their relationship with food is in a really good place before we even try to get to the the fat loss phase.
Sure.
So having that relationship with food is 10 times more important than the fat loss at this point, at this time frame. And being able to know that and accept that and say, okay, I'm ready to actually repair my relationship with food. And then we can get started on seeing like how many times we go to the gym and how which foods are going to affect that and how my body can use these to give me energy throughout the day. And just being able to like know the fact that this intuitive eating approach is not for fat loss. It's just for a relationship with food. Kind of. Does that make sense?
It does. I think it's honestly really well said. Um, Being able to respect your body is also creating a healthy relationship with food and putting
Yeah.
that first above all else. Like your mental health and your
Yeah.
well-being with your body in relationship with food are the number one. And we're going to always put that number one. We're not going to put physique goals above this and be like, well, okay, we'll sacrifice having a healthy relationship with food to see physique goals take off faster or more efficiently. And I think that's honestly a big difference in my coaching perspective over the past couple of years as I've really evolved as a dietitian and a coach. Um, it sounds bad because I know I got people here I'm like doing like, the whole fitness thing with, but it is so much more enjoyable for me as a coach to see people make strides with their relationship with food and work towards a place of body acceptance and neutrality rather than working with somebody that's like all they care about is how fast they can lose body fat, how much muscle they can gain, and they want to do it in 3 months no matter what. And it's like I used to like to work with those people, the ones that were like, yeah, no matter what, I'm ready to just do it. Now it's more so I want to work with people that want to really create a healthy lifestyle, like a true lifestyle change. and allow whatever happens to their body, positive, negative, just be a byproduct of, this. And I'd say that's like, there isn't a lot of negative that comes along with intuitive eating when you're doing it correctly. So,
When
um,
you think about it, it's way more sustainable. It's a sustainable
yeah,
approach to nutrition than saying, "Oh, I want to lose X amount of fat in 3 months. You're gonna get me there. However you're gonna get me there, you're gonna get me there." And this is the reason why I start everyone off of this is like it's you're gonna be able to use these tools throughout the entire time.
yeah, your whole life.
Your entire life. You're going to be able to use these cues and it's going to be like almost rewire your brain of like this is how I'm going to look at food now. And now I'm like so happy that I can not have a fear of food.
Yeah.
And it's actually it's completely changing a person's life rather than just changing it for 3 months trying to get that.
Right. That's a great way to put it. You're changing a person's life, not just their body. And I think that's what we're doing a lot different here at TM, like the past, even just this year, this calendar year. Like I never thought I'd see the day where like Strive 45's default nutrition approach was intuitive eating. Like
Yeah.
that's the default. Like that's what everybody gets set up with, is intuitive eating protocols. And it's like, my gosh, like that's really cool to see the evolution of that. And I think what's even cooler is hearing the way that Justin will utilize this during a contest prep. He'll use intuitive eating, which I know is like walking the line of working against some of these principles, because technically, if you're dieting for a bodybuilding show, you are not rejecting the dieting mentality. However, he is making bodybuilding a better place by bringing in intuitive eating practices and helping the athlete's mentality to stay in a healthier position, which is really cool. But no, I think that was really well said. And I think, another piece to the principles of intuitive eating that isn't technically eating, but it's a big part of our energy balance and our health, is exercise, seeing exercise as movement. And I've really tried to change my verbiage on how I talk about exercise these days. And I try to always refer to it as movement, because you can find a way to move your body that feels good to you. There's no one size fits all.
Hmm.
And that's another area where like my brain has really expanded the past couple of years. Um, I would be super curious to hear from you, Kate, with clients of yours right now. Do you feel like they all do a similar form of movement, or do you feel like you have a good variety of movement? Like some people might be drawn to weightlifting, some people are drawn to endurance. Like, do you have a good variety, or
I
kind
have
of
a
all?
good variety, but I have one that's like in the past it was like rumble,
Yeah,
like functional fitness,
yeah.
which is what I do, obviously. That's how I
Hmm.
came into this space, is functional fitness girly. That's
Yeah.
my MO.
Hmm.
Others is going to the gym and being able to use all of these, in which props to them because obviously I made like that Instagram post. I'm like that going into a gym is hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
And sometimes group fitness classes is a much easier way to get introduced to it
Yeah.
because you have basically a personal trainer coming up to you, giving you cues, but you feel okay because there's a big group of people where he's also giving other people cues. So it's not like you're just the one pointed out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think that it's important to be able to know that you have variety. You don't have to just go to the gym. You don't have to go to Planet Fitness. You can
Yeah.
go to Rumble. You could go to F45. You could go to Cycle. You could go to Pilates. You could go to all these other places. There's so many different ways to move your body instead of just lifting weights.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like as of maybe the past 3 months or so, I've had a big shift in like what movement looks like for my people. And I'm working with a lot of people that Pilates is like their favorite thing to do. And like Pilates is what they do. And they do some like walking, and they're like light impact girlies. And I love that. And I'm motivated to take a Pilates class, by the way. Like that's one of Kate and I's goals, is
We're gonna take a Pilates class.
we're training
My
legs this
sister
week,
is a Pilates
but
instructor.
yeah, we're gonna take a Pilates class, and we'll let you guys know how it goes. But I got people doing Pilates. I got people that are still bodybuilding. I got people that just love to train because they just love the way it makes them feel. I have marathon runners on my roster, which I have so much respect for. I don't know how they do it.
Right?
Um,
Me too. Me
It's
too.
like amazing. Like shout out Kennedy. She runs like 2 to 3 marathons a year. It's insane. Yeah, I know, a year, 2 to 3 a year. So like what's
You
cool
mentioned
is,
like has run 2 3. I'm like,
yeah,
then
no,
in a year.
yeah, she like, yeah, she's crazy in the best way.
Okay.
Um, and then I got some people that are like doing CrossFit. And I'm like, that's
I
super
love
cool.
CrossFit.
I know you were a CrossFit girl. So
I love
like
CrossFit.
I think for me, as I've kind of stepped into like my own intuitive eating journey really heavily this past calendar year, like ever since I was preparing for my RD exam, I was like, I can't do none of this anymore. I'm done. I'm done with the
Yeah.
whole body building thing. When I kind of hung up the heels officially. Um, I have been really interested in like doing other forms of movement. Like I have taken a good stint of only training 3 times a week, and I'm hoping to get back to 4, but we'll see how that goes. And like I'm enjoying like cycling and Peloton and cardio. And like I was liking running, but my knees can't keep up. So we'll see. We'll see if we can revisit that at a different time. But
Mhm.
like being able to explore different types of movement, not feel like you're in this like box of like, I gotta just strength train and do this cardio protocol and like train like a bodybuilder all the time. Like you can move your body in so many different ways. And movement should never be a form of like punishment for what you ate or, what you chose to drink or how you chose to live your life the day previous. Exercise should add to your life, not be something that takes away from your life, and shouldn't be a stressor within your life.
Mhm.
Maybe sometimes you might be short on time. It's a little stressful. Like, how am I going to figure out how to get my workout in? But I think that's a normal amount of stress that you might have, just like as a
As a,
human, kind of
yeah,
find time to move your body because it's hard when you're busy. But it shouldn't be something that stresses you out. So I love.
exactly.
Um, Lastly, honoring your health. And I think this can be like an open book in terms of like what that means to you, but like the goal is not to view all foods as equally nutritious. Like eat foods that make you feel good and be able to find a balance between the fun foods and the nutrient dense foods. And I think when you're able to find that healthy balance, you truthfully have a healthy diet. If you can't have the cookie without feeling guilty, your diet's not healthy.
Hmm.
Even if all you're eating is fruits and vegetables, in my opinion.
Right.
So that's kind of the last principle. And the goal is really to just remove that judgment about food. Anything you want to add there, Kate?
No, I think you hit all the bases on that. It's just really, really to sum it up, it's taking the judgment out of food. And it's taking like even if you personally have a judgment on it, it's redirecting your brain to think, I don't have to feel guilty about this. I don't have to feel guilty about eating something. Of course, there's different factors in all of these things. There's different factors that go into it, but when you think about it, it's really just taking the guilt out of eating.
Yeah. Yeah. And the cool thing is like, we're technically all born as intuitive eaters. It's our society and our environment and our life circumstances that change that
Yeah.
and that change our relationship with food and our view with food. And I think with social media, like it could kind of go one of two ways. Like it could either be really positive, like if you're following a lot of creators that are like intuitive eaters and body positive and like living a healthy life and like, showing you that.
I use that a lot for when people are wondering what is a good mechanism to like be able to like feel myself as body positive and like what does body positive mean? I'm like follow body positive creators on Instagram. That's how you're going to see like how all of these things impact their lives and how they fixed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
think it's really inspiring. Like it's inspiring for people
absolutely.
to like be able to post that and then have other people look at it and be like, wow, now I can do that. Now I can be like that.
I think the social media conversation is something I have almost with every person at some point
Mhm.
when we're talking about body image, at least, and relationship with food, because certain creators will post very triggering days of eating. That
Right.
was the number one thing when I was in the ED facility, in the inpatient and resi, and I think even PHP. These were like adolescents. A lot of them are like young 20-year-olds that are in the facility because that's kind of like when your ED kind of starts, when you start getting treatment. The
Yep.
therapy just anyways, they said that full days of eating were one of the most triggering things for them. And I know like JM and I have had a conversation because he wants me to post more like days of eating. And I have a big issue with it because of that feedback that I got from the residents at the treatment center. Because even though I could think that I have a nice balance of fun foods and nutrient dense foods, what if that didn't align with the person viewing it and they're like, oh, she eats so much healthier than me. I gotta, change the way that I'm eating or whatever. Like, I would never want that to be put on somebody else and like make you feel guilty about the way that you're eating and fueling your body based off of like what my food preferences are and how I choose to fuel my body. So I think the creators that you follow definitely impact your relationship with food and body at a rate that we've probably never seen before. And it could be a really positive thing if you're following the right accounts. It can also be a very negative thing if all you're following are, I hate to say it, but bikini competitors, fitness models, Instagram baddies with, the BBLs.
Going
Like,
to
it just,
subconsciously change the way you're thinking.
it does. And we
Yeah.
even see it with like men in like, to bring up like porn, like we see it with them and like they even say like all the time, I feel like in like the media and like studies and stuff, like if you are constantly following like all these like, Instagram baddies that are probably photoshopped and they've gotten, which surgery is your own choice, that's fine, but like a body that can't really naturally exist on the earth, I guess you could say, it changes the perception of like the male's attraction to women. And so then they have this girlfriend at home who might be like beautiful and fine and wonderful, but she doesn't look like that IG baddie. And it's like changing his attraction to her. And it's like all from being following certain accounts online.
Yeah, right.
And I think we see that a lot with women in their own body image. I know I have a client right now. God love her. She is the sweetest thing. And she is beautiful, like absolutely stunning, drop dead gorgeous, perfect human. Perfect in terms of like what our society says perfect, right? And she has nothing but terrible things to say about her body and has so much discomfort in her body. And she says all the time, it's because all these girls she follows on social media have these super flat stomachs. Like, why don't
Yeah,
I have a super flat stomach? And I'm like, honestly, like most of what you see is like not even real. It's not even real life. It's angles, it's lighting, it's, all these
right.
different things. It's Photoshop. I mean, there's a lot of advancements now with Photoshop that we can't even like detect by the eye. Like you just can't even tell. There are AI people that look like real people that are computers.
Yeah.
People are like falling in love with AI people and getting catfish. Remember like that show Catfish? Like it's crazy.
Insane.
So I say unfollow the fitness accounts, follow more dog accounts. That's my way of
Follow
like,
more dog accounts.
yeah,
Follow more.
and body positive creators and people that like are leading by example in a way that you want to see yourself go with your relationship with food and body.
Yeah.
It's not easy though. It doesn't happen overnight.
Not.
No. But one little tidbit I want to add here is gentle nutrition structure with the rule of threes.
Mhm.
And I know this is something that Kate and I both utilize with our clients, and every person at TM actually uses. So that, again, exciting. Strive 45ers are using this. Coaches are, when they're introducing intuitive eating, bring this up. So rule of threes, you're having at least 3 meals a day. You're having balanced meals, carbs, fats, and protein at each of those meals. So your 3 macronutrients, because your body needs those macronutrients to do different things in the body. The carbohydrates are going to be the preferred energy source. Fats are going to be important for hormonal health, also another energy source at rest. And then we have protein, which is going to help repair structure, create digestive enzymes, and also in terms of producing hormones and other things along the lines of that. So you need to be getting in enough of all 3. So that's why I like to say have all 3 at each of your meals. I like to recommend 2 to 3 snacks a day. I give a range because everybody's hunger is different. Everybody's meal composition looks different. So kind of lean into your internal hunger in terms of what you need and allow that to guide you. And then eat every 3-ish hours. Back to my discussion about blood sugar regulation and that helping with your appetite regulation. So if you're eating every 3 hours, your blood sugar is not dipping too crazy. So you can better regulate your appetite. So when that meal rolls around, you're not eating past hunger cues or eating to that point of discomfort.
Exactly.
So that in a nutshell is kind of like what rule of threes are. Kate, I'd be super curious to hear your thoughts when teaching somebody how to eat intuitively and they're not sure if they're on the right track. How do you like assess that with them?
I like to do little cues like that, like say rule of threes, explain that in a way that they're going to learn. And then just giving like certain goals almost. Like I had a question from one of my clients. It was like on the protocol it says like, okay, make sure you meet your protein goals. And like she was like, how do I do that? And all these things. And like, okay, so like say I was doing like the fist, the hand, like all of these things, kind of just very like portion control sizes,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things, just to like give her a very like brief overview of how to get enough protein in your meals.
Yep.
Being able to send her some suggestions of like ways to get more protein or like little snacks that you can have during the day that's going to add to your protein goal by the end of the day. Another one I like to do is like, I know a lot of people have Stanleys. Unfortunately, I lost mine.
I'm so sorry. And here I am.
I only got one.
Jess gave me this for Christmas. My bestie just came over on Saturday and gave me my Christmas gift. And I felt so bad because Kate lost this exact Stanley on our trip to Texas. And I texted
So
Kate, I have terrible news. No
I
more.
freaked
She
out. I
calls me.
freaked out.
She flipped. I was like, I had to tell you because you're going to see it on all the Zoom calls this week that I got a Stanley. I'm so sorry.
Oh. But anyways, when people like hydration is a huge one. When you're starting out coaching, I know a lot of clients, but like they have trouble getting in enough water. And it's hard when you're like, oh my God, like I didn't realize I had to drink this much water.
Yes.
So I'll use the Stanley as
Mhm.
like a 40-ounce Stanley, like normal Stanley. I'll say, okay, drink one Stanley. Okay, drink half the Stanley now. Like it's almost like in their plan, like this is how much water you're supposed to be drinking by now. This is the amount you should be
Well,
drinking by
that's good.
now. Like
Little
all
timestamp.
these things. So I think that really helps them in a way where they're understanding, like, okay, I have my Stanley, I have my emotional support cup and I
Yep.
can drink the whole one. And by the end of the day, they're down like 3.
Yeah.
Like,
They,
yeah.
that's awesome. I love that.
I'd like to give those little cues in a way and explain them in a way that they're going to understand in a way that like it's not it's not like, okay, you need to do this, 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 and this. And I'm like, okay, try to aim for I love to say try to aim. Try to aim for this. Try to aim for that. If you
Yeah.
don't get it, it's okay. It's
Mhm.
not the end of the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't need to cause yourself stress because you're low in your water. And it's funny, actually, I work with a dietitian, and she struggles with her water intake. And it's funny because every week for a while, she was like, I know I'm low. I'm going to try really hard to get it up. And she
Yeah.
feel like so guilty about not getting the water in. I'm like, don't worry, girl. It's okay. It's okay. You're going to keep working on it. I love that. So like portion control guidelines, which I absolutely like, I give to my clients as well. What we gonna say?
I said I have another thing after you after
Oh, you can go right ahead. You can go right ahead.
well, one of my clients was having a lot of trouble with hitting
Yeah.
her steps.
Okay.
So I've said this in so many of my content things that I put out is setting small goals for you to be able to hit by the end of the week. So
Yep.
she was looking to get 10,000. She was getting 8,000. I said,
Close.
okay, so if we do you did 8,000 last week or 8,000 this day. Let's try to get to 8,500 the next day.
Yes, I love that.
The next day, maybe do 8,750. Do that. Like make small goals so you feel like you're hitting them and you're like, oh my God, all right, let's go higher. Let's go higher. Let's get that. And then finally you're at 10,000 by the end of the week.
No, I love that. That's a really good approach. And I will utilize something very similar. Like, say I set a step goal and like somebody's like, oh my gosh, I'm trying really hard to meet this. I can't. Okay, let's revise it. Let's revise the
Yeah.
step goal. But like, can we do a little bit more than say that 8K? Sure, maybe we can. And then we find a way to hit it. I think that's really, really great. And when it comes to like assessing if somebody's on the right track with like the portion control and like doing the rule of threes and like making their plates, I'll even have people send me pictures of their meals, like as we're starting. Like, okay, send me pictures and I'll look at every meal and I'll give you feedback. Because I find that for a lot of people when they start, they're like not super sure. And even if they've had a history of tracking macros or following a meal plan, because those numbers are removed from them, even though I know their eyeballs can guesstimate, they've seen, a cup of rice plated however many times in their life,
Right.
they don't have that confidence in themselves. So I find that a lot of like the work that we do as coaches is like just building up that confidence in the person's self. to like keep going and like know that they're on the right track. Yeah, there's constructive feedback at times, and we provide that education, but I'd say like a lot of it is just building up somebody's confidence in themselves. So I love that. So those are all the principles of intuitive eating. I feel as though it would be so interesting for us to chat a little bit about who do we feel the intuitive eating approach is for? What kind of person?
Anyone.
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 Yeah, I agree.
Just fill out anyone.
I would say pretty much anybody, as long as you are not in a place of like intensive eating disorder care. So for people that are in that bracket of humans, probably not going to be an intuitive eater yet.
Meaning should go into like an institution, like should
So
be
like,
there or still in. Yeah.
yeah, so like really deep in their eating disorder.
I
Like
see.
they
I
can't
see.
work. So like this is where it's like, oh, because I love intuitive eating for everybody. But I'm like, oh, there are some people like they might be in
It's
such
not, yeah.
difficult spot that they need a meal plan. They need me to tell them exactly what to eat. And I don't work with like intensive eating disorders, like as a coach, by the way. Like I work with mostly binge eating and like just fear of food. But in a case where, you know, somebody needs a lot more structure and guidance just to make sure that they're eating throughout the day, a meal plan can actually be really great for that. But I find that for most people, general health, wanting to just fuel their body properly, intuitive eating is a beautiful approach. And I think it's honestly awesome for athletes as long as they can plate enough food at their meals. Like that's where like some customization comes into play with the portion control guidelines that like we give to our people. So like it's not always a one size fits all, but I think every person can benefit from some form of intuitive eating. And I feel like that should be the end goal for every person. So if they start out on a meal plan, they start out tracking macros, I think the goal is to evolve them and transition them to intuitive eating because that's going to be the most enjoyable eating style for life, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's like a big part of the work that we do is like making sure that everybody transitions to intuitive eating, get some sort of experience with it. Like even people that are following meal plans or following macros, like they're getting 1 to 2 intuitive eating days in. So they're gaining those skills. They're getting that practice.
Exactly.
What's always fun is like when people are like, can I have more intuitive eating days if I'm like not offering it right off the bat? And I'm like, hell yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I love that. And Kate, do you feel like people should track macros or follow a meal plan before they eat intuitively, or do you think they can kind of skip that?
See, this is what I wanted to see what your opinion was on
Yeah.
this because I think it can go both ways. It can go before, it can go after.
Yeah.
After it's more a transition of like, okay, now you have these skills to go on throughout your life. The beginning one is starting off a plan and just hitting it hard that this is like we need to fix your relationship with food first.
Yeah.
That and then once that relationship with food is fixed, then you can go into like macros and meal plan with a healthy mindset. Because when
Yeah.
you start off with the meal plan, immediately you're putting yourself in that mindset where it's like, okay, I have to meet these, and it's harder to transition into intuitive eating sometimes. So if we do like a sandwich method, you're getting both practices on each end, and then
Mhm.
in the middle where it's like, okay, this is for my body, and I'm able to do this, and I know that intuitive eating is coming after, so I'm not scared that this is gonna be my life forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So this is where it differs is like, it just depends on the person. Cause I like both types of approaches. Like some people, they may have zero like experience, like manipulating their nutrition. A lot of the times I find a lot of people come to me and they're under eating, whether that be intentional or unintentional. And for some folks, it is beneficial to have them familiarize themselves with maybe some sort of meal plan matrix where there's flexibility and food choices to, you know, kind of pick and choose depending on what they feel for that day, but kind of learn what certain portion sizes look like, what a balanced meal looks like, what it looks like to properly fuel their body if they have been under eating. And
Hmm.
sometimes I think that's where macros or a meal plan first can be really helpful. And of course, if there's like a specific goal and a timeline that we're working on that requires a meal plan or macros, like we'll default to that as long as mental health with food is okay. never, ever, ever put the physique goals or the timeline above that.
Mhm.
But the more and more people I'm getting now, I try to really push them into intuitive eating right from the start. If I feel as though in order for them to get to the goal that they want to get to, they don't need to track or follow a meal plan, which is different than like what I used to do. I was big flexible dieting, tracking macros coach. Like that was my default. And now I'll say, I think I'm close to like a 50-50 with like IE. And then I got some meal plan people and meal plan matrices. And then I've got some people tracking macros flexibly, and that's just like what they prefer.
Mhm.
I think it really just depends on the person. I know there's a dietitian that I respect a lot that is a big macro tracking dietitian. And she strongly believes that every person should really track macros first before they eat intuitively. And this is where I kindly and respectfully disagree a little bit, because I think you can do a lot with portion control. And you can teach people how to create a balanced plate without ever having to use a food scale and weigh things to the gram and
Right.
track everything. I just don't believe that you need to do that first. But for some people, it might work better that way. But for some people, it might work better for them to just go right into intuitive eating with the guidance of a nutrition coach, a dietitian, and like let them kind of guide you and teach you how to eat intuitively right from the start.
Right.
So that's like my preferred method when I can, is like, let's just go right into IE. I'm seeing so much benefit with it. Like there's so much less weight cycling that's going on. There's so much better relationship with food, obviously, like mental health with food, less anxiety about food. And I've even seen, and we have a lot of research and literature on this, is like the actual health markers come back better because people are still improving their eating behaviors, like eating fruits and vegetables and like, focusing on heart healthy fats. So like lipid profiles are improving, blood sugar management's improving because there's all of these gentle nutrition guidelines that usually people are following if they are working with a nutrition professional or dietitian as they're learning how to eat intuitively. And because the people are no longer weight cycling, their metabolic health is so much better. Their lab work is coming back better. So I do believe that intuitive eating can be a really healthful diet. And it allows for a lot of variety, which we could get into a whole nother podcast about the role that variety plays in the diversity of the gut microbiome and how important our gut microbiome is. But that could be a whole nother episode, maybe we'll do a whole thing about like IE and why it's better than like your standard bodybuilding plan for your gut microbiome. That'd be a really easy episode too. But yeah, I think intuitive eating is definitely becoming my default for pretty much everybody that is open to it. And I'll add this one last thing. I've even used like meal plan matrices with intuitive eating. So for people that are like really new, don't know where to start, I don't give measurements on the meal plan matrix, but I give them like ideas based off of the foods that they like. And I'm like, here's a carb, here's a fat, here's a protein. You can kind of use your rule of threes. You use the portion control guide, boom. And that's working really, really well for people that are like, I don't even know where to start. I feel like I need more guidance, but it's providing structured guidance while being flexible.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of my opinion on it. And I feel like one last thing we can touch base on to kind of wrap it up is like we've talked a lot about fun foods. We've talked a lot about giving yourself undeniable permission to have the foods you want. But like where does alcohol fit in all of this, right? Like alcohol is such a, I don't want to say weird food group, but it is because technically it's like not really beneficial for you,
Exactly.
but it's a part of our society and our culture. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, Kate, on like how you typically advise your clients to go about alcohol when eating intuitively.
Right. So I'm just gonna give a brief overview of like this is what I do for them, and then some of my like personal experiences, like how I handle it. Um, so my first thing is choosing choosing a certain drink, like if it be like a clear spirit, I guess.
Yeah, spirits.
A clear spirit, a clear libation,
Release some spirit.
um, or like a seltzer or something like that. That I tend to stick away. What's the word? Like steer away from like dark liquor and all these things.
Yeah.
Liquor is the word I was looking for. Why couldn't I think of that?
Liquor.
Liquor. Um, so that's where I'm at with that. And another thing is like you don't have to drink to black out. It's difficult for a lot of people. And I know that's like deeper to trauma for some people. And it's just like a way
Oh,
of and I've learned that if you are sticking with like 3 drinks, depending on how big you are, how small you are, you know what I mean? Like how you look as a person, I guess, like your body type. If you are feeling like you are in a good place and you know that point where you're like, "Oh, I'm good. I'm great. I should have another drink. Like I am doing perfect right now." That is the time you get a water. That is the time where you ride that drunk until like you're feeling like you're going down a little bit. And even at that point you should be going down when you're leaving. That is when everything should be going down is when you are exiting the bar. So that is a really good way that I like to tell my clients, like, okay, once you're feeling good, you have that water.
Mhm.
And once you have that water, you still have something in your hand. It's all very psychological. You have something in your hand. If you have something in your hand, you see everyone taking a sip, you're going to take a sip, and at least you have water. You're not putting more booze into your body.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and also I would say a big, 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 big one: eat the day you go out. Eat, because when I was younger, I remember not eating specifically to get more drunk. You're 16, you want to get drunk. I get it. But now I know what days I'm going out with my friends. I plan that day. I say I'm going to eat 3 meals. I'm going to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner before I go out. I'm going to have at least 2 to 3 snacks. I'm going to drink so much water. I'm going to drink Pedialyte. I'm going to stay hydrated. It's important to have that basis before you go in there so you have something in your stomach. So it's not just booze in your stomach, just kind of sitting there swashing around.
Sloshing around.
Sloshing around.
Feeling gassed as hell in the stomach. I know.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like that's good advice. Make sure you're eating throughout the day. And I used to be very guilty of that too. And I think if you ever came from a background of tracking macros and they did the whole, I feel like there was like a stint on socials, like track your alcohol and your macros. Here's how you do it. And like I
Mhm.
used to try to do that because at the time I was very deep into the bodybuilding space and I really didn't want to steer off my protocol. So I would fit in alcohol to my macros and that would leave me with less food for the day. And then that would be the night where I'm like not having a good time at the end of the night.
Right.
Another thing which is interesting because I don't think that there's really much discussion in the intuitive eating book about alcohol and being intuitive with alcohol because it's a substance, it's not really a food.
Yeah.
But I find that for some people, if you say, well, I'm not going to have any alcohol, I'm going to restrict it, and I'm only going to give myself the okay to have it every once in a while, similar to binge eating, you binge alcohol because you don't know how to regulate it. You don't know what your limits are. And you don't have a lot of, not to say that you should have a lot of experience with drinking, because I don't want to be promoting that, but it's like, I would rather a client, if they like alcohol, to have, that 2 drinks or 2 to 3 drinks once a week, every week, versus restrict it for 3 months. And then when they do give themselves the okay, have 15 drinks and then end up blacking out and throwing up and having a horrible time and don't know how to regulate their intake. And I will say this from a personal experience. I think I fell into that category very heavily because I didn't give myself the option to have alcohol very often, especially like throughout all of college. I was in bodybuilding prep. So when everybody else was like experimenting with that and like kind of doing that, I was prepping for shows. So then I get done bodybuilding. I'm like, what, 24, 25? I don't know. I'm like a bit older. And I still don't know how to like basically go out and drink without getting sick because I didn't have that practice of like regulating my intake
Right.
in that way. And so I think that's an interesting kind of like dynamic to open the conversation about is like with alcohol, how does it fit with intuitive eating? And like, of course, like in terms of like actual health guidelines, like there is literally no benefit to alcohol. If you can avoid it, like, yeah, that's great. But if you are somebody that enjoys having a drink every once in a while, I'd say practice moderation versus total restriction and then binge on it. That would be my recommendation and my feedback. Because when you are drinking alcohol, there is a negative shift to your metabolism, which is going to increase lipogenesis, which is the storage of fat. Which it's not the end of the world. Like, okay, fine, sure, you drink once a week, not the end of the world. But like, if you have a night where you're binge drinking, the more alcohol, like the poison's really like in the dose, if you will. So like the more you have, the more severe impact on the metabolism for like days to follow the alcohol consumption. Usually the worse it's going to be on your hormonal profile. So when you drink, that's going to drop your testosterone. It messes with your cortisol. You don't get good sleep quality. So you're messing with your REM sleep. So that puts your body into a more stressed out state. And of course, it dehydrates you. So then, say you want to go exercise the next day, you're at increased risk for injury. We see this all the time with like college students. And like, this was always harped on. When I had to do like my little like nutrition workshop with the college students, I had to like touch base on like alcohol and like how it can increase the risk for injury, all these things. And it's against the NCAA guidelines. If you have alcohol in your system and they blood test you or whatever the next day, you can get in big trouble and disqualified. It's against the guidelines. It's a no-go there, but it can increase the risk for injury. So it's not good for really any sort of physical benefit. They used to like really promote like, oh yeah, it's good for insulin sensitivity, or it can be good for heart health because of the resveratrol in a glass of wine. And now they're like even saying like the cons don't really outweigh
the pros, yeah.
It's like, don't even use it. It just, if you're going to have it, just accept the fact that you're putting toxins into your body and like, that's
Right.
it. So I like to talk about that because I think alcohol is a big part of our society. And when you're in diet culture, alcohol can be viewed as like something you should track into your food and eat less food to have the alcohol fit per se, or something you should avoid altogether. And then it's like when you do give yourself the opportunity to have that drink, you don't really know how to regulate yourself. And so that's also a dangerous situation. So moderation is key for pretty much.
Moderation for this, definitely.
So
I think yeah, 2 to 3 drinks, you're good. That's for me. It's gonna be different for every single person. Like,
yeah.
say Ty, who's 6'3", 220, however much he is, I don't know, could have 3 drinks and be like, I don't feel anything. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I'm very small compared to him. So it
Yeah.
all depends on the person, but it also is important to know what it is your limit. Once you feel good, get that water and stop.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of similar to like when you're eating fun foods, when you start feeling full, all right, slow it down. Let's take a sip of water. Let's pace ourselves. Applies here too.
Pacing is huge.
Yeah,
Pacing
pacing.
big.
Pacing with food, pacing with drinks, pacing is important. So
Shots. Make sure you don't do 6 shots in a row. Sometimes. So if you're
and
having fun, if you're just having fun sometimes.
it depends on the vibe, but like on a regular basis. This is like on a regular
Regular basis, yeah.
try to be chill with it. Try to be chill with it. But we all have our nights out. Yeah, we get
We
it.
all have our nights.
We know that. What happens in Texas stays in Texas now. But anywho, that's our intuitive eating episode. We hope that you learned something new.
That was a
And
good one. I
I
liked
think
it.
it was good.
That was very good.
And if you have any questions, any listeners here about intuitive eating, if you want to gain access to my free intuitive eating ebook, Beginner's Guide, let me know. I'll DM it to you. And if you're interested in intuitive eating coaching with either of us, we are taking new clients. Kate is taking on Strive 45 clients right now, which you can get a taste of what it's like to work with her and get some intuitive eating experience, which I totally recommend. But that's the episode. That's it for today. So we'll see you guys in the next one.